So for anyone who's been absent from social media, you probably know that there's been, well, a few problems with the latest game from Amazon, New World. And well, the fact that it can pretty much break your GPU. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on, why it's doing it, in my opinion, and well, what you should be doing next. Let's do this. Oh, I can't believe I forgot to buy a bloody mouse. If only there was a Champion Series gaming mouse that I could pair with my brand new Corsair K70 RGB TKL keyboard.
Excuse me, there is the new Corsair Sabre RGB Pro Champion Series gaming mouse. Built for and tested by top esports professionals.
Where's that voice coming from?
With an 18,000 DPI optical sensor, capable of up to 8,000 Hz hyperpolling and ultra-responsive quick-strike buttons. Pair it with that keyboard of yours and you too can hang out with the pros.
Really?
Well, not you, Andy.
Oh.
But everyone else can. Click the link in the description to find out more.
So for anyone who doesn't know, the game is New World. It's from Amazon Games, which, you know, aren't exactly the most prolific developer in the world, but there is a little bit of a backstory. So I want to kind of start from there and move all the way forward as to kind of, you know, what's happening, potentially why it's happening, what you should do to stop it happening, and so forth. Now, normally when I make these videos, we do it all scripted, but this is basically completely unscripted. I do have some notes in front of me, but I'm going to try and, you know, get to the point as concisely as possible. Now, Amazon Games uses, well, the latest game, New World, uses the Amazon Lumberyard engine, which was basically licensed from CryEngine. So it's not exactly a new thing. There was a deal that went on a couple of years ago. No one really knows how much it was for. Doesn't really matter. But what happened was Amazon actually ended up acquiring kind of CryEngine in a roundabout way. And what they actually did was strip down most of the code of it, about 70%, and they made it free and open source as an engine. Now, it is also cross-platform, which means, you know, it's going to work on PC, it's going to work on Xbox, PlayStation, and so forth. So the actual engine itself it sounded pretty damn promising from the get-go. Now, New World is the latest game that they've actually brought out, and it was initially in an alpha stage. It then moved to beta. I think it was either yesterday or the day before. And this is where people sort of really got into it. You know, it's been described as a little bit of a mixture of like Elder Scrolls Online and some other, you know, really top titles out there. Now, being in a beta, I guess you do have to take this as, you know, there could be some issues. That is kind of the whole point with a beta. You can't just say, there's issues, this shouldn't be like this, you know, like we've seen with games like GTA 5 and things like that, because they are fully fledged games. They are, you know, in a gold release. Being in a beta, it does kind of, I guess the onus falls on quite a few different people as to when there are problems, whether it be the developer, you know, these are the problems, you can fix them for when it does go into sort of, you know, gold and sort of, you know, full on release. But you also do have to blame the people who are playing the game, because you can't expect a finished, polished product. Now that goes, you know, it kind of goes to say when it comes to things like little glitches, little problems. You don't really expect it to have huge problems like we've seen, which predominantly revolves around the RTX 3090 EVGA for the Win 3 card and basically the game bricking your card. Now, there is a little bit of a backstory. I haven't played this game. I do have a code for this game, but my system has a 3090 in it. So I'm not even going to risk it, because why would I, knowing that there's problems like this? We are going to potentially try and investigate this a little bit further, but it's a really, really tricky one to do, because it's like, aha, I found the problem. Now I have a broken graphics card. Now what do I do? Because a lot of the cards that I have, which, you know, you can see behind me, don't have warranties as such. They are, you know, review samples. If they break, if I'm lucky, I can get them replaced if there is the ability to do so. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the case compared to an average, you know, consumer. Now, this all kind of started, and the news came out about this from a streamer called Glad. Now, I've never heard of him. I've never watched any of his content. Some people actually reached out to me and said one of their favorite streamers, Glad, was the first one to report this issue. Now, from what I can see, yes, he was the first kind of known report. Now, there were other users having kind of issues and things like that to kind of, I guess, back up what Glad was saying, because when this happens to one person, I mean, what can you really realistically take away from that? Something happened to someone, it's an isolated incident. Well, it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. Now, looking through Twitter, looking through Reddit, and, you know, looking through various forum threads, there is a lot of information going around right now. And another user actually did state that they had issues where basically they had their whole screen go black, The PC couldn't pick up the GPU anymore. They turned it off. They managed to turn it back on and actually had some saving grace. The card still worked. So being, I guess like anyone, they kind of turned around and said, right, there's clearly an issue here. I need to see if it's a widespread issue. I need to see if it's isolated to this. I've not made any changes in my system. So they went and tried loads of different games, 4 or 5 different titles from what it seems. Absolutely no problem. After that, they went back to the game, and this is where it really went downhill because they actually heard a visual pop. Now, visual pop, I say visual pop, they heard a pop. Pops are not good. Pops generally mean that capacitors have blown. And I've had it before because I actually had an ASRock motherboard where I ended up putting more volts than kind of what it could handle through the motherboard, through the VRMs to the CPU, and a capacitor literally blew off of the motherboard. You heard it, you saw it. It was not a nice sight. It was not a nice sound. It was horrible. Now, I guess the consistency between Glad and this other user were the fact that they are both using EVGA 3090 for the Win 3 cards. So it seemed like these are the ones that are basically being affected. Though once we dug down into this a little bit more, we were actually finding that on Twitter and on forums, there were users with Gigabyte 3090s who were affected too. So as soon as I sort of heard about the EVGA ones, I went digging into this a little bit deeper, and I sort of looked at it. What is the difference between a For the Win 3 card compared to other 3090s on the market? We've tested quite a few here. We've not had the For the Win 3 cards, but we know the main difference with them is that they do have temperature sensors, and a lot more temperature sensors than most other cards out there. Generally, when you are looking at temperatures on a 3090, you're going to be able to bring up the core temperature of the actual GPU die, and you're going to be able to bring up the temperature of the memory, sometimes a few others. With EVGA, there's like 8 to 12 sensors on these cards. So maybe there was something going on there. And I will kind of, go back to that in a little bit, but it did seem like maybe something more was at play. Now, on these forums, someone with a 3090 from Zotac said that they played the game for about 2 hours and everything was absolutely fine, but they're not going to chance it moving forward, which kind of makes sense. It's a sensible way of doing it. If, you kind of have to look at, do you chance it? Do you not? I personally wouldn't, and that's why I've not even tried testing the game. We are going to potentially, depending on how this kind of unfolds and how this story develops, we are going to potentially look at maybe doing something with some older generation cards, because I don't mind that if they do go pop, if they do go bang, it's not the end of the world. But it depends on how quickly the studios and everything sort of, move forward with this. Now, it's not just restricted to the 30 series or 3090. People are claiming that other cards are doing the same in terms of getting the black screens, getting kind of, problems with the game loading and fan speeds ramping up to 100%, which generally you'd like to think would be revolving around temperatures and maybe too much voltage being put in there, which kind of makes sense. If you're going to hear a pop, potentially that's going to be a capacitor, which means that too much voltage is going through that capacitor. If the fans are, ramping up to 100%, that generally means that you're going to have higher temperatures due to higher voltage. So this is all kind of building a little bit of a picture in my head. But then other people are claiming their cards are doing the same, but they're not dying. So maybe there are some voltage restrictions. So we're sort of answering all these questions in our head, but not having a real kind of definitive answer. All we know is that, other cards are having the same issues, but are not being bricked like the 3090s. Now, forums are an amazing thing because you get so many different types of users and things like that. Now, one of the best types of users are the customer service users who are kind of, down with the cool kids. They're on the forums and they think, they're in touch with what people are feeling and what people are thinking. And you can tell the frustration from people on these forums because all they want is a straightforward answer. And you know what answer they got from the New World Forums customer service advisor? To look at the common issues. I mean, if this is a common issue that playing a game basically makes your card go pop, bang, sizzle, and bricks it, I mean, you seriously have to be wondering, what are you even doing developing anything? This should not be classed as a common issue. I mean, I'm going to put the onus on this customer service advisor. They clearly have no clue what they're talking about because a common issue, come on. It's just not something that you can... It seems like a real kind of blanket response. When you email someone and you get them automated response, this is exactly what it kind of seems like. And I don't like that at all. Now, where does this all kind of go? Why is this happening then? What is our kind of, opinion on it? Now, there have been reports of power limits being pushed to the limits. And I will kind of go through that a little bit. They have said that turning VSync on seems to fix it for some reason, but that isn't applying to all users. It's only applying to some and not to others. So you can't take that as, okay, there's a game development issue or there's a driver element issue to it. There has to be a lot more. Now, looking through Reddit, there was one user on Reddit who's actually RMAing his 3090. EVGA have actually said they will RMA cards based around this issue. So sort of, good going there, EVGA. You have got something right. I mean, let's not talk about capacitor gate and the fact that you didn't know the difference between POS caps and SP caps, but at least you're doing something with this. Now, this user who's actually RMAing their 3090 for the Win 3 found that the 4-pin JM3 PWM fan header actually had a little red light on it. Now, for anyone who's not had an EVGA card or an Asus Strix card or some of the later Gigabyte cards, you actually know that before you put power connectors in, there'll be a little red light. As soon as you put it in, that light either goes off or goes green to say it's connected. Now, with the 4-pin JM3, there's actually, from what I can tell, 4 of these on the whole card. Because there's 3 different fans, they all plug into a different JM header. So I think it's like JM2, 3, and 4. There is another one that you can actually plug an external fan into to run across it. If you're benchmarking or you just wanted an extra fan in your system, if you're trying to push them overclocks, that sort of thing. Now, he's actually found a red light above this header. So it seems like maybe there's a fault between this, which kind of tells you now that maybe there's temperature issues. So just like we were saying before with the capacitor potentially going pop, there is something with the temperature sensor / fan side of things. And as I mentioned, EVGA cards have a lot, well, they frankly have a ton of temperature sensors compared to some of the other brands out there. Now, sticking with the whole temperature theme, again, drilling down into the forums, Reddit, Twitter, now, they don't actually seem to be too high. The temperatures don't seem to be astronomical. They are, I guess, on average around 5 to 10 degrees higher than in other games. So if you're getting 60 degrees, now you're seeing sort of 65 to 70 in this game. But we're not seeing huge gains, like up to 100 degrees, where you'd expect a fan to be ramping up to 100%, which is what people are seeing. And this is exactly what happened with the people who have had their cards essentially brick now. The fans actually ramped up to 100%. You're thinking, what's going on? And by the time you've even sort of thought about it, pop, and that's it, it's gone. So other people are getting the same. We've got users on our Discord who are using R9 290s and 290Xs, 280s, and anything from that kind of old generation all the way through to now. And they're saying exactly the same. They are getting fans that are ramping up to 100%, but their cards are still running fine. And a lot of this is not just in the game, it's in the menus and things as well. So obviously with this, people understandably are going to be worried about, I'm seeing this, is this the next step? Am I going to have this? Now, the actual developers of the game have now basically said that there is a patch and it has capped the menu so that it's not running at, 2,000, 3,000 FPS and it's basically letting the card run wild. It's now capping it to 60 FPS. Though with that, again, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. The FPS cap is still actually causing issues for some people. Now you have to remember, with the menu system, it's actually rendered. And because of that, it did allow these huge FPS sort of, runoffs. So is it a problem with the developer? Is it a problem with drivers? And I think with this, just like anything, you're always going to have someone is keen to blame someone else. Now, the developer has basically said that it's a driver issue in kind of a roundabout way, so they are putting the onus on NVIDIA. But if that was the case, we'd be seeing this on a lot more cards than just predominantly the EVGA ones and then these Gigabyte ones, which I've seen these people say that it's happening on the Gigabyte cards, but I've not actually seen anything concrete to really, put that into something that seems viable. If I saw proof, yeah, I'd happily go with it. But at the moment, the only proof we've actually physically seen, just probably like you guys, has been on the EVGA cards. So they have actually said it's a driver thing. You can, enforce an FPS cap. The problem with that is the FPS caps seem to only affect the game and not the menu, which was still causing issues. So capping to 60 FPS in the NVIDIA control panel, again, that was something that they advised to do. And it seems to work for some, but then not for others. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Now, there are other people, others who are still running 3090s, but not EVGA or Gigabyte cards, like Founders Editions. And they're saying that even with the 60 FPS cap on there, the game just simply ignores it. So again, what is the point? And the other thing is that, and this kind of further instills to the temperature, the voltage, and all them other problems, that people are seeing voltage spikes. And this is happening on all sorts of cards, not just 3090s and not just EVGA cards, but all sorts of cards, where they're actually seeing the voltages spiking up to around 1.1 volt. So if you are keen to sort of see what this game is doing, run it and have something like HW Info, MSI Afterburner or something at the same time, and you will see the same sort of things. Now, again, this goes back to what I was saying about the motherboard and the capacitor literally flying off the board. It's because there was too much voltage going through that particular part of the motherboard that happened. Now, the other thing with MSI Afterburner and other software tools is people are now claiming that they're actually seeing their clock speed being pushed much higher than kind of what's manually set by the user. And they have found that by decreasing the speeds by about 200 megahertz does seem to kind of fix it to a certain degree or counter what it's actually doing. But then you shouldn't have to do that. And if you are doing that, still, how do you rectify that issue? So it's a tricky one. And this comes back to the capacitor thing and everything else that I've already said, that it seems like some of these reports of like power limits are really showing that the cards are actually being pushed to the limit and then beyond the limit. Now, again, another fix is that turning VSync on seems to fix it for some people, but again, not for others. So I kind of feel like we're just doing swings and roundabouts here. There's nothing really concrete. No one really knows kind of what's going on. And the only thing we've heard so far is that the developers of New World and the customer service team, who, you know, common issues, are claiming that it's driver-related settings and frame rate limiters. I mean, it's nice that they're not blaming, you know, the whole community is not blaming capacitors again. I mean, come on, we all remember that. That was actually software related, even though some manufacturers, like EVGA, said that it wasn't. Now, there are a couple of other things going on which I can't get my head around, and this, I'm going to put my conspiracy theorist kind of tinfoil hat on. Scan Computers are probably the biggest retailer in the UK, especially when it comes to GPUs, and they are EVGA's biggest partner in terms of the UK, and they are the only ones who sell Founders Edition cards. Now, Scan have slowly but surely over the last couple of weeks been getting an influx of 30 series cards in. And for the past probably 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 days, they've had 3090s on their site, ready to go. And, you know, I'm sure people have bought like one here, one there. They're still higher than MSRP pricing. Well, today when we look, they're all gone. I mean, is this some kind of coincidental thing? Have NVIDIA told them to pull the plug? Have EVGA told them to pull the plug? There has to be more to this than meets the eye. Suddenly we hear about these problems with 3090s. Suddenly you can't buy a 3090. What's really going on with it? And like I say, I've got to be kind of speculative here, but there's definitely more to it than kind of, yeah, meets the eye. Now, I know people who have played this game on RTX 3080s. I know people who have played on, like I say, older cards, R9s and things like that. And they've played it for tens of hours with no issues whatsoever. So what do we take away from this? Well, my best advice, in all honesty, is don't run the game for now. It's literally not worth risking your GPU, especially if you have an older GPU that's maybe outside of warranty. Obviously, if you have an EVGA card, if you want to risk it, that's entirely up to you. They are saying that they will honour the RMA. The problem is, we know how hard and how scarce it is to get hold of these cards as a new customer. What's it going to be like as an RMA customer? If you're sitting there going, right, I'm going to chance it, damn it, it's bricked, I now need to RMA it. How long is it going to take you to get either that card fixed, if it can be fixed, or get it replaced? Because if there's no stock to buy, what makes you think that there's going to be any stock to replace in the customer service world when it comes to RMA? So yeah, I mean, my thoughts on it is, yeah, literally don't play the game. It's not worth the hassle. There's clearly something going on. I don't know who's to blame. I don't know whether it's the game developer, NVIDIA, or a combination of everything, whether it's EVGA and Gigabyte now. Until I sort of see more reports on that, I'm still kind of earing more towards, okay, there's EVGA problems. Is there really Gigabyte problems? The problem with the internet, anyone can come along and just say, oh yeah, I've got problems. I've got MSI and yeah, that's broken. Or I've got Palette, that's broken. I'm never buying a card from them again. You're always going to get people like that. And especially on the likes of Reddit and things like that, there's a lot of people out there who want to kind of get their opinion across, but not quite say what's going on. I mean, I saw earlier, I've got a 1060, I'm getting 30 frames per second. Fix the goddamn game. It's like, what's wrong with 30 frames per second? I used to play Cyberpunk at 30 frames per second. There's no problem with it. These are the sort of people who, you know, aren't helping and stuff like that. But the reason behind this video is I wanted to get this discussion going to see how many people have had this problem. If you've had the problem yourself, obviously put it into the comments below so that we can kind of maybe investigate a little bit further and a little bit more into this, because there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. And at the moment, I think it's still too early to judge kind of what's going on. Like I say, I could grab a 3090 from the shelf, I could put it into a test bench and probably brick it, but why would I want to do that to myself? So maybe I'll look at some older cards, see kind of if there's a little bit of a trend as to kind of what's going on with power delivery, temperatures and things like that. So let me know if you want to see that sort of thing. Again, let me know in the comments section below and maybe it's something we'll look into. The problem is with stuff like this, it's so time sensitive that we could spend all this time investigating and doing all this different kind of, work of what's going on, why is it going on, this, that, and the other, and then a patch comes out or a driver update comes out and it's wasted our time. So I'm not going to do it unless you guys want to see it. So there you are. Hopefully this video helped. Hopefully it kind of gave you a little bit more of a summary as to kind of what's going on. I know some other people have done videos like this, but I wanted to give my opinion on it. You guys seem to like these kind of, talking head unscripted kind of videos. So there you go. Yeah, so on that note, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know exactly what to do. And I'll see you in the next one. Don't play that game. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.